Hi, welcome. I'm Courtney Trelecki, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today, we're talking about accessibility in the workplace, why it's so imperative, and how we can help you make it happen. Accessibility is not just a buzzword, it's a real responsibility that businesses and organizations owe to their employees, and something that benefits everyone. It's also something that we truly value here at Atos and can help make it a reality for others by working together to create and maintain an accessible workplace. We know that it can be difficult to navigate the tech plus the requirements. Well, that's where we come in. Together, we can empower and include all employees. Now, we're going to be going through the challenges and the barriers, but also the innovative approach we take, along with best practices, tools, and the benefits. Now, I want to get right over to our experts here at Atos in this topic. I'm joined today by Greg Smith. He's the Digital Workplace Technology Specialist, James Thurston, North America Accessibility, and Trudy Fountain James, the General Counsel, Atos North America, and Executive Sponsor of Atos Accessibility Resource Group. Trudy, I want to go ahead and start with you because I know this is a really personal topic for you and something that you've been really passionate and outspoken on. Can you tell us a little bit about your role here at Atos and what it's been like in the workplace as an employee and an executive with a disability?
Yeah, sure, Courtney. I joined Atos in 2018, which has been about 5 years ago. Roberta Carluccio at the time pulled me out of a pool, literally, in Mexico. And I was with ACS Xerox previous to that. I started in 2005 as a senior VP in Global. I took a 4.5 year sabbatical to take care of my dad, who'd been diagnosed with dementia, and my 18-month-old son, who had been diagnosed with Asperger's or autism in the first quadrant of the spectrum, right? I went back into a leadership role just recently because I really didn't want to do that at first, not because I didn't care or anything of that nature, but I was trying to work my way back into a position at Atos. And so I took that role, and I'm now the General Counsel of North America. I was diagnosed with dyscalculia. I call them the three dys's: dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and dyslexia when I was a young child. And it's just something that I've used throughout my life and my career as a superpower, really, and not as a disability or and I put dis in parentheses, or a problem. It's just something that I was blessed with. I'm also a mother of 9, 7 of which of my children have neurodiverse gifts. And I made it a promise when I came back this time to work that as a leader, and even before that, I was going to lead by example and show that it's okay not to be perfect, but you are perfectly imperfect. And so I do that because I become the gummy worms and the sprinkles to the vanilla cupcakes, and that's okay. And I want to show everyone that it's okay. I make companies that I work for more successful because of it, and others can do the same. And I want to show them that. As the ADAPT executive sponsor, I want people to embrace the idea that people experience and interact in the world in many different ways. That the neurodiverse is not a defect, it's an outdated term that reinforces sameness, and we're not all the same. And that gummy worms and sprinkles and chocolate shavings take a company from good to great, and to show that there's no one right way to think and learn and behave, and differences are not deficits, but they're gifts, and in actuality, they are superpowers, and they're valuable gifts. I experience every day still some form of pushback because not everyone knows that I'm neurodiverse. It's not like written over my face. I have been highly successful. And whether it's because I misread an email or I do not fully answer an email, I don't give up because I want to show those people how to grow and how to deal with someone who is neurodiverse. I want to help them understand that being perfect is not always cool, that it's cool to be imperfect.
Thank you, Trudy, so much for sharing such a personal but inspirational story with us. Now, I want to go ahead and send it over to Greg and James for this next question. Workplaces, they're constantly evolving, whether that's in the office or remote. How can employers keep adapting to a modern workplace but make it inclusive at the same time?
Thanks, Courtney. Atos digital workplace teams are seeing many IT departments today trying to figure out or are in the process of implementing an approach for dealing with managing employees and employee technology in this new hybrid workplace, right? This is one of the areas that Atos IT leadership is helping many of our customers. It's been a challenge that started for many IT departments at the beginning of the pandemic, and now hybrid work is really the standard for most organizations. Technologies love features like cloud-based software distribution and full user self-service support, and also remote device management. And trying to figure out those capabilities might be aspirational for some organizations, but it really seems that many organizations don't have it completely figured out. Atos is helping our customers make those transformations. Workplace technology is a rapidly changing space, and with the advent of as a service software consumption, change is happening very fast, faster than organizations can consume it. And just when you think you have it all figured out, along comes a new technology like AI with a substantial set of challenges, but also opportunities for organizations that can take those technologies and make them work for them.
Yeah, James, would you weigh in on this as well?
Sure. Thanks, Courtney. So I've been working in the field of accessibility and disability inclusion for more than 20 years. And I really think that today we're at an incredibly exciting time to be doing this work because a lot is changing, and much of it in a very positive way. So I like to point to three sets of changes or trends that I think are helping to drive greater accessibility and greater and more inclusive workplaces. The first is growing awareness. Awareness about accessibility, awareness about disability inclusion. The kinds of conversations that we're having today with CIOs and IT professionals and all kinds of companies and organizations is dramatically different than even just a few years ago. I think we're no longer having to convince a CIO to care about accessibility or even evangelize the topic to him or her. They get it. But now they want to know what to do and how to drive progress. And that's a much better conversation for us to be having, I think, with companies than before. I think today leading companies really do recognize, because of this awareness, as Trudy, as you pointed out, that diversity is the sprinkles or the secret sauce that takes a company from being good to great. A second trend that I point to is public policy and standards. Every day we're seeing new government policies, new regulations, new standards activity that impact the workplace and how technology is deployed and used by employers, not just here in North America, but really all around the world. For example, here at Atos, we are regularly tracking more than 300 different accessibility standards, laws, regulations of different kinds and in more than 75 countries. Each of these has implications on how our company and how our customers are using technology in the workplace. And then the third, and I think really exciting trend that I like to point to is accessibility innovation, particularly leveraging data and leading edge technology to make the workplace more inclusive for employees with disabilities. So a great example is Sonic Cloud. It's a really impressive, innovative workplace solution. It helps people with hearing loss optimize and personalize their individual listening experience across all the different kinds of electronic devices that we're all using in the workplace today.
Yeah, things really have come a long way. And James, would you mind explaining, please, what exactly an inclusive workplace means?
Sure, absolutely, Courtney. So that's a question that can mean different things to different people. A couple of years ago, I led a project for a global nonprofit organization called G3ICT, and that project defined inclusive workplaces and drafted an actual blueprint for employers to create and support those inclusive workplaces. And in that work, we were able to convene leading employers and organizations like Steelcase, Microsoft, Bank of America, AT&T, the Government of Canada, as well as leading disability advocacy organizations from around the world. And the project found that regardless of industry sector or geography, we don't have a clear and shared understanding of what makes or defines an inclusive workplace. And I think that lack of clarity is not surprising, because we know that creating an inclusive workplace is not simple necessarily. It's not a one and done sort of thing. It's a journey and an ongoing effort. And for me, at its most basic, an inclusive workplace is one that really does work for everyone, including employees with disabilities. It supports all employees bringing their whole selves to work, and not only allows them to make use of all of their skills and strengths, but actively supports them in bringing that knowledge and those skills to the workplace. So a fundamental building block of an inclusive workplace absolutely has to be accessibility. That is to say that the IT estate at a company has to work for all employees, including those who may be blind or have hearing loss or ADHD or have trouble using a mouse and a keyboard. In an inclusive workplace, all the line of business applications that are being used, the collaboration tools, the websites, the digital content that's being shared among colleagues in the workplace, all of that is accessible.
Yeah, those are some really good points. Thank you for breaking that down. Greg, you're our tech expert here. Could you explain it from that perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. Thanks for those insights, James. But from an IT perspective, what we want to do is we want to help our customers and their employees get the technology, the software, and devices that they need to always be able to do their best work. Since many times in IT, we aren't accessibility experts, we don't know what solutions might be best for a user, which is why we rely on our accessibility team to help us identify and deploy the right solutions to the right users. So in IT, we typically have a vast array of technical capabilities, enabling us to manage hardware, software, and report on information about our users. And that's the big theme behind the webinar today. We believe that the right partnership between IT and accessibility teams is a partnership for the future, one where accessibility teams bring their expertise on what is required for employees and their accessibility needs, and our IT teams bring the implementation, support, and management of enterprise accessibility technology, things that probably accessibility teams struggle with.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's really, like you said, the key to why we're doing this today. Now, Trudy, I get back to you. Can you explain to us why it's so important to have an accessible workplace?
It's extremely important. According to a Deloitte study that I've talked about numerous times, a neurodiverse team if you have a team that's neurodiverse, it is 30% more productive than a neurotypical one. This is a huge gap and a huge win that we could recognize if we embrace neurodiversity and neurodiverse teams. However, the the fact of the matter is that in society, the unemployment of neurodivergent people are about 8 times more than the average, the total average in the US. On top of this, they're less likely to be promoted to roles like mine in a senior level or a high profile role. It doesn't have to be this way, though. We can do better. And with groups like Accessibility and IT, as we were doing at Atos, it becomes a better way of life, right? It doesn't, again, have to be this way. Focusing on our strengths in all areas of work, in all areas of the workforce, means that we can focus on what an individual brings to the table and not what they're deficient in. Inclusion means we have to change our behaviors and practices and stop assuming that we bring everyone into the conversation, because we don't always do that. We need to prioritize diversity, especially for the neurodiverse like me. We should all do what we uniquely do first, which is our main job, and that should be focusing on our strengths and not our struggles. And I think with the accessibility programs, like, for example, I use Dragon Speech, that becomes, just a key to leveling the playing field for most people. The best way to enable a neurodiverse leadership team is to craft roles that suit a wider variety of minds and then balance them across the entire firm. The power of leadership team is more important than any one personality or any one cognitive profile. Flex rules to allow colleagues to remove stumbling blocks and to raise our collective gains. Mentor and coach people to learn and in turn teach others what your strengths are and what you can bring to the table. And I guess it all boils down to leading with empathy, which has always been my key. If you lead with empathy, these things will happen. If you listen and lead, and then you can also direct your employees to a safe space and be able to give them the sort of accessibility that they need through groups like Adapt and Aware, and also the tools necessary that Atos does provide through the IT platforms.
Yeah, thank you, Trudy. I mean, it can really help an organization be more successful, as you've shown through your own experiences. So, thank you again for sharing that. Now, back to you, James and Greg. What are the biggest challenges that businesses are facing when it comes to accessibility?
Sure. Thanks, Courtney. What's exciting is that here at Atos, we can actually quantify and benchmark what are these challenges and the biggest challenges through the experience and the data that we have from performing accessibility and inclusion maturity model assessments of companies and workplaces. So for the sake of time, let me just talk a little bit about one of the top accessibility challenges we see facing many employers today, and that's metrics, measurement. We do what we measure. Most companies just don't yet have good information about their current state of accessibility, and so they can't really create effective strategies for continuous improvement without knowing where they are today and knowing what to measure. So let me give one really good example of that. We're doing some pretty innovative work with our customers to help them understand real time and in quantitative detail just how well their IT and their assistive technology are meeting the needs of their employees. We've created an end user computer analytics approach that can tell us or tell the company that across an enterprise to what extent tens of thousands of devices are taking advantage of both assistive technologies that the company makes available to their employees and even all the incredibly powerful accessibility features that are built into software applications and browsers and operating systems. So with that, we can see when a company is deploying new applications or upgrading versions of existing line of business software, what is the measurable impact on accessibility? What's happening? Like how many screen readers crash as the result of a software upgrade? Or on how many devices do certain built-in accessibility features like Zoom text or speech to text stop working effectively when there's an upgrade or new software introduced? And we can measure and report how employees may be struggling to make effective accessibility adjustments across a company's technology and devices. And that kind of data is incredibly powerful and can support continuous accessibility improvement and drive senior executive focus, greater company commitment to accessibility and inclusion, and even increase resources and support for accessibility.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sure those data metrics are just going to continue to grow. Greg.
Yeah, so from a technical perspective, many customers have told us that their biggest challenge is knowing how to support users who require accessibility technology on their devices. Back to the point that I made previously, that if the enterprise accessibility teams and IT teams are in partnership, we can make for a much more inclusive technology environment that really results in a better user experience. For IT to be able to help users, we need to know what types of devices and technologies we're supporting, which users require that support, and where the support needs to happen. Example, if an organization has something like a walk-up service bar or a walk-up help desk, right? And that service isn't enabled to be able to help a user who requires accessible technology, is that service really any value to an accessible technology user? What we've seen is that there really are a couple different ways that you can enable support services for accessible technology users. First of all, some of our customers just kind of bundle in or include accessibility or accessibility training as a part of their current service desk delivery model, which is very kind of generic and widespread and requires you to train everybody, right? But we've also seen our share of customers who have asked us to enable them with our dedicated accessible technology service desk capability for their accessibility users. This enables our customers' employees to get accessibility enabled support service for all their IT needs from an Atos team of IT support specialists who are trained, enabled, and ready to support users based on their accessibility needs.
Oh, thank you so much for explaining that. Now, James, I know this is kind of a broad question, but could you break down some of the benefits of becoming an accessible workplace?
Absolutely. And I always like to start with just reminding people that in many markets, many geographies, it's the law. And that is being in compliance with the law is an important benefit for making sure that your workplace is accessible and inclusive for sure. Over the years, and including really recently, I think we've been able to quantify even more what some of the business and competitive advantages from creating and sustaining, importantly, maintaining an accessible digital workplace is. For example, there's some really great research by an organization called Disability In the American Association of People with Disabilities that shows that companies with strong disability inclusion policies and practices outperform their peer companies and competitors that don't have a similar commitment and practices. So companies with strong accessibility and inclusion programs have 28% higher revenue and double the net income than their peers that don't. And without naming specific companies, we can certainly see among our own customers here at Atos some real business benefit from implementing accessibility and inclusion programs. For example, with productivity, one customer in the healthcare sector has quantified that for every employee that is out due to an unresolved accommodation or assistive technology issue, the company loses $8,000 per day per employee in productivity. When those unresolved accommodations and AT issues extend to many days, which they can without adequate support and expertise, the cost per employee averages more than $200,000 in lost productivity. And with employee turnover, for that same customer in the healthcare sector, they know that from exit interviews with employees with disabilities who have left the company, that they specifically cite delays in AT support as a contributor to them leaving the company, as a reason that they've opted to leave the company. And the cost to that company to replace a single employee that is left out of frustration with how their accommodations and assistive technologies are handled and maintained, that cost is about $75,000 and takes about 21 weeks to get a competent replacement in that role.
Wow, a lot of benefits, and I'm sure there's even more that we'll never be able to get to in just this webcast. So thank you, Greg and James. I know you both have touched on this a little bit already, but can you explain how Atos can help businesses become more accessible workplaces?
Absolutely. I think one of the best and most strategic ways that a company can advance and evolve their own approach to being an accessible and inclusive workplace is through maturity model assessments. These maturity model assessments help a company get a really comprehensive and a much deeper understanding of its current approach to accessibility. It helps to drive alignment across the entire company. It helps them to create actionable plans for continuous improvement. So for example, with our Atos maturity model tool, we can look across 32 different variables that we know are critical to creating and maintaining an accessible and inclusive workplace. Our tool measures things and measures progress and gives actionable insights in areas like the company's policies and governance systems for accessibility and employee accommodations. Do these systems exist? Do these policies exist? Are they implemented consistently over time and across all departments in the company? Are they implemented consistently across geographic subsidiaries as well? We can look at and measure progress on how is the company using global accessibility standards. There's some really robust global accessibility standards out there that define what accessible means for every kind of technology and all kinds of disability. Is the company using those standards? Are they using them when they're buying and requiring those standards when they're buying technology? Are they part of a gating system when they're developing new applications and websites? Are people trained on these standards across different departments in the company? So we can look at that and measure maturity of an organization on that kind of variable. And really another area that we can dig into is what role do people with disabilities, both customers and employees, importantly, play in defining the company's approach to accessibility and inclusion? Is there a disability employees resource group like Trudy was talking about earlier? Are there internal and external communications channels that are accessible so that customers and employees with disabilities can give input to the company and raise issues? On all of these variables and many more of them that define what an accessible and inclusive workplace is through these maturity model assessment tools, we can quantify on a scale of 1 to 5 how well the company is doing. 1 being not much commitment, not much capability, and 5 being really a world class on whatever that variable is. And ultimately, these assessments and the results, the scores, lead to a roadmap that can help a company really grow and mature their efforts on accessibility and digital inclusion.
Yeah, and in addition, James, in addition to the assessment that you kind of described, there's also other ways that Atos is helping our customers in the marketplace with accessibility challenges. Think about this. Not all of the challenges an organization has might only be around their employees in the workplace. but they might also have challenges with how their products and their services are consumed by their customers who have accessibility needs. The first area where we help our customers is around accessibility testing. As a part of this service, we help our customers design products, tools, and services that can be effectively used by everyone. This can include ensuring that the digital products that they might create are in compliance with any relevant standards and ensure that they're consistent with any assistive technology APIs so that it doesn't interfere with the use of assistive technology. Another area where we're helping customers is with accessibility experts who we augment our customer teams with that effectively help them meet their accessibility goals and delivers accessibility as a service. This service ensures that a customer's employees with accessibility needs are provided with the tools and services they required integrated into your standard business processes rather than, say, by exception, the way it's many times done today. This could include our teams assisting your governance teams who pick the assistive technology for your employees and help them build out a service catalog, or actually also help them support the users in the way that they use assistive technologies.
Right. Thank you so much. And as I said earlier during this webcast, Atos truly values accessibility. Trudy, could you tell me how our company has worked to become an accessible for all employees and how we've been successful doing that?
Well, it's kind of twofold, right? It's a grassroots campaign by certain people that are neurodiverse or diverse in any respect, right? That have a quote unquote disability. At Atos, we actually do strive to walk the talk, so to speak, when it comes to accessibility and inclusion. I think what really has to happen is twofold. You have to come from the grassroots campaign, but you have to have education at the top through the XComs and through the leadership of the company so that they understand sort of what, sprinkles and chocolate shavings and fruit and gummy worms and all that stuff add to the mix. I think it was James that mentioned a 28% better profitability or better result. I told you 30%. So the numbers are the numbers, right? He's shown 28, I'm showing 30 from a Deloitte study. So it's very accurate and true. What we have to do is we have to talk through both coming from a grassroots approach of like the teams like ADAPT and also the XCOM approach with educating our leaders to create safe spaces, right? So that we can have our own internal governance systems and our policies in place that kind of flow those through our org structures and support all these guys and promote them, right? Because it's just the right thing to do. And in turn, it becomes more accessible and successful for the company, right? We go from, again, good to great. ADAPT was a key player in my life when I came back to Atos, to be quite honest. It created a safe space for me to be able to start coming out and telling people about my special superpowers. And from there it grew. And I think if everyone is given the ability to have that safe space, whether it's within their own team organizations, their own groups, or the ADAPT program or the Savant program that we're starting up in North America, whatever that is, you create a safe space and you start pushing them down their journey. Again, 28%, 30%, good to great. That's really the bottom line, to be quite honest. And that's how we should strive, again, to walk the talk.
Thank you, Trudy. Very inspirational always to hear that. And I know you sharing your story has been inspirational to other employees here to do the same. Now, we know businesses and organizations can benefit. What can somebody do, James, to get started?
Sure. I always like to leave people in companies with a few quick and easy next steps. Maybe starting with some simple discovery, some initial questions to be asking about your own company. Things like, is your company aware of and using these global accessibility standards that I talked about? Does your company have a public-facing accessibility policy describing the corporate commitment to accessibility and inclusion, and even to some extent the governance systems that ensure that commitment is achieved? Does your company have a disability employee resource group? And what's its role both in defining and in addressing ultimately some of the accessibility inclusion issues that might arise in the workplace? We know that each of these are real drivers of measurable progress in companies when it comes to accessibility and inclusion. So maybe start there and even consider undertaking an accessibility maturity model assessment yourself.
All right. Well, thank you three so much for taking part in this today. And thank you for everybody who has watched this webcast. We have gone through the best practices, the tools, and the benefits of an accessible workplace and how you can get started on your journey and how we can help. But here's the thing, we don't want the conversation to end here. We have a couple of different ways you can reach out to us with any questions at all. Of course, our speakers here are active on social media, including LinkedIn, and would be happy to answer questions. They're very passionate about this topic and making a difference. We also have an email set up that you can send to. It is dwpaccessibility@atos.net. That is dwpaccessibility@atos.net. So please feel free to reach out through there and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And of course, you can head to our website where we have more of our services related to this. Thank you.